Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah? Well, in the interest of time, I'd like to get started and welcome you all to the next forum presentation in our Civil Discourse series. And today we're extremely lucky to have with us Gustavo Torres, who's the Executive Director of CASA of Maryland, which you may have heard of. CASA of Maryland got its start in the basement of a Presbyterian church in Tacoma Park, helping Central American refugees who were fleeing strife and civil war in 1985. Today it has a budget of over 10 million, and it has about 150 employees, 200 volunteers, and it serves the immigrant community in our region. They provide services and advocacy on immigration issues. And given the polarizing nature of this topic and how it has been used in our two elections, we're really lucky that we have Gustavo here today and to talk to us about civil discourse and advocating on sensitive public policy issues. And immigration is certainly one of those. So I will ask you to please join me in welcoming him. And we'll do about 20 minutes discussion and then open it up to questions. So Gustavo, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for the important work that you do. And I'd like to start by asking you to give us just a little bit of background on your personal journey, how you came to this important ministry and mission. What led you to it?
So, muy buenos días. Good morning, all of you, and thank you so much for being here. Again, my name is Gustavo Torres, and I am also one of the immigrants who arrived to this beautiful country back to 27 years ago, actually. Long time. I was 3 years old when I arrived. I wish. And I arrived due to the political and the violence in my country. I am originally from Colombia, South America. So it was very, very difficult moment, and still we have these challenges, but in particular during the 80s, when I was in college, that was very, very difficult for people like me who were very active working for social justice in Colombia. I'm originally from a beautiful town called Medellin, and it was very, very difficult. Probably you heard this name, Pablo Escobar and all of those criminals. Well, I'm part of these many thousands of people who left the country due to this violence and these political realities. And I arrived to the US in 1991, and immediately I started to work in CASA as community organizer and employment specialist to help day laborers and domestic workers to organize, to find jobs. And before I arrived to the US, I went to Central America. So I have the opportunity to live in Central America for 4 years. I became a journalist. So I have the opportunity to meet many people and understand the reality of the Central American community. So when I arrived right here in the US, pretty much I knew what happened. The violence, the crime, the poverty, all of that is still Central Americans live right now. And probably you heard about the caravana that is coming to the US. Is very, very similar situation that back to 25 years ago, 30 years ago happening. And unfortunately, it happening due for the US policies. And probably you know that we are a powerful country, and whatever we do in our country have an extraordinary impact in our small towns, in our small countries. And that is what happened during the Reagan administration. It was very involved in Central America, and it created a very, very challenging and difficult situation for Central Americans, refugees and immigrants. And it was exactly during that time that many immigrants from Central America arrived to the Washington, D.C. area. And it was no any organization to welcome them. So a group of U.S. citizens like you and refugees came together in a basement of the Presbyterian church and say, we need to welcome those people. What we are going to do, so they create CASA in 1985 to welcome, to provide services, English classes, to provide clothing and other different basic services to these new refugees. And that is my history and the way how CASA started.
And CASA has transformed and now provides both services, the kinds of services you discussed, financial planning, employment, education, but it also does advocacy. And in that advocacy role, it works a lot with faith communities, is my understanding.
Absolutely.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the kinds of advocacy that an organization like CASA does and the role that faith communities play in that.
Absolutely. It was back to 15 years ago that my board of directors realized that yes, it was very, very critical to keep providing high quality services to these refugees and immigrants. And by the way, no longer Central Americans, many people from Africa, many people from other countries of Latin America arrive to our doors. And our board of directors realized that yes, it's so critical to keep providing those services. English classes, computer classes, employment, legal representation, all of that. But we realized that it was not enough to change a system that was creating this kind of situation to our family. So our board made a decision that was also very important, to start to organize our community, to start to advocate for our community, and to start to work with many and other different stakeholders, friends, and people who really cares about this issue. So we started to advocate for many issues, including comprehensive immigration reform, including driver license in Maryland. I'm very proud to, probably you already know about this, but we passed a legislation in right here in Maryland, and now more than 200,000 people who are undocumented, they have driver license to drive in this country. That is a very important accomplishment, because for our community, they don't have any documentation and have the opportunity to drive and take the kids to go to school or get a job, etc. Driver license was so very important. So that is the kind of the advocacy that we do with different congregations. So we work with different congregations to go and testify in Annapolis or right here in Rockville to advocate for minimum wage, to speak with Congress people, or to speak with the county council or with the county executive, to educate them about how important it is to make sure that we pass legislations and policies that welcome the Latino and immigrant community right here in Montgomery County. Is so very important. So that is the kind of thing that we're doing. We become a membership organization, and for us it was very important not only see our members as a clients, but more as a members, people who want to be engaged, people who want to participate on the decision-making process of their lives. So now we have around 100,000 members in 3 different states. So we are now in Pennsylvania, in Maryland, and in Virginia. And in all of these 3 states, we provide all of the services. We advocate. We also participate in the elections because we help people to become U.S. citizens. I don't know, you know, but in Maryland, we have 250,000 immigrants who are ready to become U.S. citizens. And they need a lot of help to fill the application up to make sure that they become citizens. And then we also register them to vote. So that is kind of another component that we have as a part of our advocacy and our community organizing.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about present realities. It used to be that welcoming the stranger and welcoming immigrants was a part of America's DNA, even though there were periods in our history when there was a backlash. And today, we are facing clearly a backlash to the idea of welcome to the stranger, which, at least for some of us, contradicts our faith values. How are you adjusting and dealing with this new climate? What do you recommend that people who care about these values and issues do in the current climate?
Be engaged. Please be engaged. It's so very important. We are facing probably the most serious challenge of our existence right now for the last 2 years. Have been so very difficult for our families, for our communities, And as you know, not only for our families and for our community, for many, many people, but in particular for our families and our communities, the way how, unfortunately, this administration attacked every single day and used our families to win or lose elections all the time is horrendous. It's a shame. We are facing very, very difficult challenges. We have families who are terrorized to send their kids to school, to ask for services, to go to our English classes, to go for our immigration assistance, because they are very scared that they are going to be deported. They are very concerned that the police is collaborating right here in Montgomery County. They are concerned about that the police is collaborating with immigration. And in some cases that is true, in some cases it's not, but they are terrified. So we are facing very, very difficult challenges, and what we're asking you is to be engaged. You have the power to be engaged. You are in an extraordinary position to make the difference for these families and for your community.
What guidance can you give us in being engaged on treating such a polarizing subject with civility?
I think that is many things. Of course, if you are not voting, please vote. That is a very civilian request, right?
Absolutely.
And that is very, very important. It's so very important. We are very lucky to be in a state that are very, I would say, very progressive in many issues. We have very talented and extraordinary senators, Congress, and county council members, and now a new county executive. It's people who really trying to work with us. But I think that for you is very important. I believe that you can play an extraordinary role at the local and state and federal level to change policies that are impacting right now our community. So for instance, you can go and speak with the county council, with the county executive, with the the senators, the county council, the congressmen. We have several issues that right now we are working with them, that I think that it will be great to partner with you. We're happy to, and we love to partner with you, because we need your voice. We need that you speak out. They need to listen directly from you, because they listen from us all the time right now. We are organized, we are well organized, but it's different. When an immigrant comes and speaks, it's very important. But when immigrants come and speak with a congregation behind the immigrant community, it played a major role, essential role. And people like you are going to play and will play a very important role in that direction. And I'm happy to describe what exactly we are doing right now. So for instance, right here in Montgomery County in particular, we are going to pass a legislation called the Trust Act. It's a legislation to prevent that the police collaborate with immigration. A very clear mandate, and say you only are going to collaborate with immigration when it's related with a criminal issue. That's it. If we have a criminal, we need to remove it from our society, period. But if we have a family, somebody who is a refugee, somebody who is right over here trying to survive, I believe, and we believe that we need to protect and make sure that this family is going to be integrated in our society. And we truly believe that in working with you, we can pass the Trust Act. It will be an extraordinary, huge impact for our families and for our community. And that is at the local level. At the national level, we have even more opportunities. And we are very lucky that we have Senator Cardin, Senator Van Hollen, who played a leadership role helping us. And now that Congress is divided, we have the Senate and the House, we have opportunities to push for progressive pro-immigrant legislations. And I believe, and we believe, that you can play a major role.
One more question, then we'll turn to the audience questions. I know it's been a sensitive issue that CASA works with the immigrant community broadly, regardless of immigration status. Can you talk a little bit about that, the philosophy, the rationale?
Absolutely, that is part of our vision. I mean, we help everybody who come to our doors. It's like if somebody came right over here to the congregation. I imagine that you are not asking for immigration status, right? It's exactly what we are when people come to CASA. You come for services, we never ask for immigration status. You come because you are in need. You come because you want to be part of CASA. So we welcome any of you, anybody, regardless of the immigration status, race, or color, to our doors. So that is kind of the way how we see our community. And we believe that our organization is a welcoming organization for anybody, and that is the reason why we are very successful to make sure that we build capacity, power, and provide services to these communities.
Thank you.
Sure.
I neglected to mention in introducing Gustavo that both CASA and he personally are recognized locally, regionally, and nationally for the work that they're doing. So this is really a great opportunity to get his views on any issues that you may have about this really difficult subject in our public policy today. So let's ask questions.
I'm really interested in the issue of the DACA people. It seemed that there was some hope that there would be legislation brought forward to ratify their status or give them some security, and that's vanished in the last 2 years. Do you have proposals in your organization for what legislation should be brought at the federal level? And also, who are the people, besides just our local representatives and senators, who are people that we could contact to advocate for dealing with the DACA students?
Thank you very much for your question. I imagine all of you know what is DACA, right?
So you can explain.
So it was a huge campaign that CASA and many other organizations around the nation developed to convince President Obama to protect around 1.8 million youth, kids who the parents brought them when they were like 2 or 3 years old to this country, because we're trying to pass initially at the federal level the legislation called the DREAM Act, and we were not successful. We only passed during that time in the House. So we finally convinced, and it was, I believe, a beautiful and very successful campaign. We convinced President Obama. Initially, he said that he didn't have the power to do it, but finally we demonstrate with many professors from Harvard and Yale and all of the different people and mobilizations and rallies and petitions that he has the power to protect those kids if we don't pass the immigration reform. So he passed an executive order called DACA for those kids, and we got that. And right now we have 800,000 kids who have been legalized. So they have work authorization for 3 years and then expand for additional 3 years. And every 3 years is renovated if they pass the test and all of that, if they pay around $700 for the application and have a clean criminal record, etc. It's a very big process to make sure that they are going to have the work authorization. Well, what happened is that immediately, as soon as this administration arrived, they eliminate DACA. So now we will be in a position that we are going to have around additional 800,000 people undocumented. So we developed different strategies, including going to court and sue the Trump administration and say, you are doing this because, very simple, you are very anti-immigrant. You don't have any justification to eliminate the work authorization to 800,000 kids. And the judge, many judges would say yes. So now the administration is appealing, and they are going to go to the Supreme Court. We are very concerned about that, because you know what is happening with the Supreme Court. It has been switched right now, and that is going to go in the next few months to the Supreme Court. So we are going to push, beginning in January, for a legislation. Now that we have a House who are very sympathetic with that issue, we really hope that we are going to pass the legislation in the House and started to work in the Senate to see if we also can pass the legislation. But linked with that particular DACA is another very, very important issue that we are going to link both of those. That is called the TPS. The TPS is what called it stands for temporarily protected status. It's another very similar to DACA status, but in this particular one is for families who arrived back to 25 years ago as immigrants and refugees. Remember that I spoke about those families? Well, several administrations, because the reality in these countries, they provide temporarily protected status to around 500,000 of these families. In the Washington, D.C. area, we have 50,000 of these families also. This administration also eliminated the TPS. So we have around 1.3 million people who used to be documented, and now they are going to be undocumented. So we also are tying these two pieces of legislation together with the hope that we are going to provide a legal status to these families. Senator Cardin and Senator and Senator Van Hollen are very, very, I will say, extraordinary leaders on those two particular issues. So they are going to introduce the legislation in the Senate. In the House, we have many, many champions that are going to do that. So that is kind of an opportunity to work together and to make sure that we save those many, many people to make sure that they are going to have the immigration status.
And there's a role for a community like ours in advocating.
Absolutely, is what I'm telling you. I mean, your role is essential and it's critical to speak with those legislators, to educate, first of all, to educate yourself about what exactly means that and the impact for those families and for those kids. Many of those kids actually are already teachers right here in the public schools. They are dreamers who are already teachers, or they are, professionals. They are now engineers. They are doctors, right? And they are going to be eliminating the status. So it's very important that you know about who are those families. But secondly, how you can advocate, how you can speak with the legislators, how you can send a letter, how you can send an email. So at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level, you can play a major role. And we're happy to work with you to make sure that we can make a difference together.
Thank you.
Well, just to follow up on Pam's question, I understand, obviously, we flipped the House. That's good news. It's great that Senator Cardin and Senator Van Hollen are leaders on the issue. Are there any Republican senators who would get aboard this combined legislation?
How hard question. It's very, very difficult right now. I mean, honestly, one of the champions who unfortunately passed our senator in Texas, he was a very, very an extraordinary leader. It's very difficult right now to find a Republican. Very, very difficult. I mean, it's very toxic for a Republican supporting our issues. Is very difficult for them because we have a president who is like attacking every single day our families. So anybody who is saying like, no, we need to find a solution is like attacking the president. Right? So that is kind of the reality that we are facing. But I believe that as a part of the negotiations in the budget and all of that that is going to be an agreement. And some people are going to come and say, we need to resolve this. But answer your question, unfortunately, I cannot name anybody right now.
Let me just interject and ask, what are the arguments that you find might resonate with people from the other side, people who are not necessarily supportive of this?
I think the most important one is that there are people who are playing a major role in the economy. They are already professionals. They are paying taxes. They are part of the families. They are right over here making a great contribution. By the way, they don't qualify for any benefits, zero. Because to receive any benefit, you need to be a legal permanent resident or U.S. citizens. They only have work authorization. So that is kind of an argument.
Yeah.
They qualify for nothing, zero at the federal federal level, zero. But they are working really hard, and they pay taxes, and they are part of this economy. So that is kind of the argument that we are making to the other side, to convince them how important is their contribution to the society.
Excuse me. I know it's beyond the mandate of your organization in this talk, but what can we also do as a country or as a community to help with the quality of life or dignity in the places they're leaving in Central America? What could we learn from the Colombian example about I know your organization is dealing with immigration, but what can we as a country do about improving the quality of life in El Salvador and Honduras?
Thank you very much for that question. It's so very important. Absolutely, the roots of the problem that we are facing about immigration is because what we are doing in those countries. If we are smart enough to invest in those countries, I think that we can hold many people to stay there. What is happening for many years, for the last 30 or 45 years, is that we provide a lot of military aid. And of course that creates a lot of challenges and crises for our countries. But if we say we are going to invest in this economy, we are going to invest to make sure that we develop small businesses, we are going to invest to make sure that we are going to stick people right over there, right, that create conflicts, and actually that we support democracies, right, that eliminate democracy, but because it's what is happening, unfortunately, for many years, that our policies, from my viewpoint, have been very wrong on Central America. Just one example, what happened in Honduras. Honduras is probably the most dangerous country around the world. Well, right, that support democracy, we support a coup right over there in Honduras. That is crazy. And of course, many people, from the great majority of the people that come from with the caravan, they are from Honduras. So I believe that we can play a very important role to make sure that we support those economies and better government in Central America. And we can do it to the State Department, we can do it with our policymakers right over here. We can tell Senator Cardin, by the way, who is part of the a committee to oversee those kind of investments and aid around the world. He can play also a very important role in that direction. So your question is very important, because if we really want to reduce that many families leave their countries, we need to identify what is the best approach to help these small countries in Central America and in all parts of the world.
Are there Republican senators who recognize the link between the circumstances in Central America and Honduras and what's happening with immigration?
Absolutely, but the problem is that they recognize the link, but the approach is wrong. Because right, that they support democracy and support investment in small businesses, what they're doing is that they are supporting people who really don't represent our communities and our families. And that is part of the problem. Because when you are supporting people who in reality they are not doing the right thing for those families, you validate that kind of governments. And I believe that that is a big problem.
Gustavo, as we talked about before the program, we have the privilege and the challenge of hosting a Congolese family here through the congregation. I'm wondering, what advice do you have for us in taking on that challenge, and can you talk a little bit about how we would partner with your organization or to take advantage of the services that you provide?
Well, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing for this family. That means, honestly, it's a revolutionary thing that you're doing in this particular moment, because helping those families is sending a message to this country that we are bearing, that we see every day in the media. So thank you for what you're doing. It's so very important. We're happy to partner with you because we have a lot of services for these kind of families. We provide English classes, as I mentioned before. We can help them to make sure that they are integrated through the public schools for those kids, many services. We're happy to sit down and coordinate with you. It's so very important, and I hope that you keep doing this, because that is the way how we send messages, very clear message to this individual crisis. Say like, we are a better country, and we are going to welcome you, and we are going to integrate you in this society. So I think that is very important. And I just want to tell you, in the macro level, we also are part of another national organization called the National Partnership for New Americans. The idea is to bring people together to learn the best practices to integrate those families at the national level. So we are going to have a conference in a month from now in Arlington, and it's around like 1,000 different practitioners that are coming to learn each other about how we can integrate those families who are arriving. What is the best programs? What is the best approach? How we can do it. So happy to provide information if you want to be part of that, because that is the idea, to make sure that we share expertise, to make sure that we welcome and integrate those families. Our responsibility is to make sure that we integrate, not assimilate. We don't believe in assimilation. We believe in integration, and the difference is that when people come, they come with a lot of values, and we also need to enrich with those great values they have. That is integration for me, when we exchange values, right? That I assimilate. When you assimilate, you eliminate the values of other people. When you integrate, you learn other values, as well as you share your values. So that is kind of the way how we see, and this is the advice that I can provide to you in our experience. Make sure that they learn English, make sure that they participate in the society, but at the same time, they have so many great values that they come from their country of origin, and it's very important that we also learn from that.
I think Francis had a question.
This goes back a couple of topics ago, but when you were talking about the DACA young people having been educated in this country and now having skills and professions and whatever, and it occurred to me, and maybe this would be an argument you could use with people on the other side, an argument of self-interest, that if we deport these people, we are actually causing brain drain from this country, which might be good for the receiving countries.
Absolutely. That is the most important argument that we have for the North Side. Absolutely. But not only me speaking. What we're doing is that we bring those kids, now young, adult, and extraordinary talented, to speak with the Congress and say, I'm a physician, I am a doctor, I am a teacher. Look, I need that you help me because I'm making a contribution to this society. And that to me is integration. When we still have our own roots, but at the same time, I'm now a professional and I'm making a contribution to the society that received me. That is the beauty of immigration. When you do that, now you are returning back what the society invests on you. And that is what we're trying to make a difference and to explain to the other side. I don't know if we are going to be successful. Actually, we are going to be successful with your help.
Could you speak to President Trump's latest, it wasn't an executive order, it was called something else, but on suspending asylum, the status of it and the constitutionality of that?
It's illegal, absolutely. And equal hate what the president is doing. And we need to be very clear about that. It's very clear he hates our community. That is the way how we see it. And the messages, not only the messages, but the policies and the actions that this administration is doing is very clear. So we immediately responded. We are suing back because we believe that what he's doing is illegal. Thinking this way, this president say, Caravana, you are not welcome because you are going to come here, you are going to enter illegally, which is not true, by the way. The process is, and by the way, I need to describe a little bit about this Caravana issue to understand. That is an issue that is happening for the last 15 years. It's not the first year at all. And the reason why these families are coming together is because it's the way how they protect themselves of criminals. Because when you come by yourself individually, the criminals, what we call the coyotes, abuse of you. If you are women, they rape you. If you are individual, they charge you thousands and thousands of dollars to cross the border. So when the families decide to come together, those families who are in crisis, they decide to come together and walk thousands and thousands of miles to arrive to the border. They are coming because the crisis they are facing, but they are coming to request refugee. And it's a process recognized by the US and the international laws that allow you to go to a border and apply for asylum. That's simple. And now this administration telling you, no, you even cannot apply for asylum. So you don't have any option. You cannot cross illegally and you cannot apply for asylum, even though that you could qualify for asylum. So that is kind of the message that this administration is telling you, pretty much simple, so like, you are brown, you are not welcome, period. And I believe that it's totally legal, and I hope that the judges are going to accept our arguments very soon. And we are going to keep working on that direction. But again, the big solution for that is that we pass, hopefully, in the near future, comprehensive immigration reform. And it's very important that you know what exactly means comprehensive immigration reform, because we speak a lot about that, but I believe that it's very important that you understand that comprehensive immigration reform will resolve the issue of the border, will resolve the issue of the 11 million people who are right here undocumented, will resolve the issue, of the future immigrants if we do the right thing. Because, I remember that when we passed in 2007 immigration reform in the Senate, because we already passed that legislation, like 64 senators support the legislation. It was not a perfect legislation, but it was the right legislation. And I remember that we asked people, to the undocumented immigrants, we have a lot of surveys, and I asked, you prefer to cross the border illegally, paying a coyote $5,000 to $10,000, because that is exactly what they charge, between $5,000 to $10,000 to cross the border illegally? Or you prefer to pay the federal government around like $2,000 and cross the border in a bus with air conditioner? And the great majority say yes, to come and work and go back. Because that is the intention. People come and work in many places. That is a lot of opportunities for immigrants to pick the food that we eat all the time, right? To work and return back. That is kind of the way how we see how we can resolve this issue of the border. And right over here in people who are already in the US, that is around 11 million people, legalize those people. Make sure that they are going to learn English. Make sure that they are going to be integrated in this society. Give opportunities, as we did to the DACA kids, to make sure that they go to school and keep making a contribution to the society. So I believe that if we come together, we can resolve the immigration issue, right? That use it, because that is what happened right now. That this administration is use the immigrant issue to win elections, unfortunately.
Thank you for being here. Could you tell us a little bit about the Day Labor Center and what they offer to the community here in Montgomery County?
Oh, thank you very much for this question. As a part of our integration services, we create during the 90s what we call day labor centers. Day labor centers are places where we train workers to make sure that they are going to provide services to you. So you need somebody who clean your yard or your home, or to cut the grass, or to do any of the jobs that you need and you don't want to do it because it's very cold, by the way. So they do it for you. So that is a day labor. Now we call those centers welcome centers, because at the beginning, during the 90s, when we opened the centers, was mostly for male. And when you open opportunities, you see that not only male come, was a lot of women who started to arrive, and families, because they are also seeking for services. So these welcome services expanded to not only day laborers, not only to train day laborers, but also for the entire family. So now in the centers we provide English classes, vocational trainings, we provide citizenship classes, and so many services for the entire families. But in case that you need any of day laborers to do a job for 1 day, 2 days a week, and people that you can trust, you can come to us, because we screen everybody. And if you say, hey Gustavo, I need somebody who come to my house to do landscaping or to paint my house, etc., we can send to you the right person with the right skills anytime. Only give me around 24 hours if you don't mind.
Any other questions?
Gustavo, thank you so much for being here. We're sitting back here going, we're so lucky to have someone like you come and share with us the things you're sharing. We've asked a lot of questions, and you've been so gracious in responding. What things have we not asked that we should be asking at this point?
I think that, thank you for the question. I think that I believe that you asked like how we can be working together. I describe how, but I think that it will be really great that if from this conversation we create kind of a little opportunity for both our organization, our community, and you to really work together and to accomplish something that you are going to be very proud. I mentioned before, pass the Trust Act right here in Montgomery County is going to be a game changer for our families and for our community. And I think that with your help, we can accomplish that. So you can ask me like how I can be helpful. I'm happy to tell you, I'm happy to sit down with you, I'm happy to coordinate, I'm happy to planning with you to make sure that we are going to do it together. So thank you, Father, for the question.
Anyone else?
If I could ask, on the Trust Act, does the Montgomery County Police or law enforcement, do they support that? Have you been working with them?
We have been having several meetings with the chief of the police. They understand they are not there yet, and that is part of the work that we need to, that you can play the major role to educate, to inform, to convince the police department how important it is for our families. We hope that with the new Congress, with the new county executive and the new council, we are going to have a great opportunity to pass the legislation. And again, with your support, with your calls, with your meetings with them, I'm very sure that we can accomplish that.
With respect to the Trust Act, I remember there was 2 years ago, I guess, there was a rally on a freezing winter day in Silver Spring, Veterans Square, and some of the speakers, one of the speakers was the chief of police of Montgomery County, and I may have misunderstood what he said, but I recall him saying something like, you know, the police are there to protect you, and we never ask about immigration status. Was that not really their policy, or is it individual officers who don't follow the policy? Or?
That is correct. That is what happened.
The latter. Okay.
We need to send we need to legislate that, because the police saying that, but in reality, is that we have a lot of cases of families who have been deported because individual police officers are making a decision to collaborate with immigration and to call immigration when they arrest somebody for a traffic violation. Just one example. Traffic violation. Again, I want to be very clear. I'm not speaking about criminals here because it's totally a different thing. If you are a criminal, you are not welcome. That's simple. But if you have a traffic violation and happen to be that you are undocumented, and then I call you immigration on you, it's not fair. So that is kind of the idea that we're trying to say, like, listen, if we have families right over here, we need to mandate to the police that they cannot collaborate with immigration to deport those families, because those families are making a contribution here. They already have families right here in Montgomery County.
This isn't a question, it's just a comment about what you were just talking about. We recently had an experience that really demonstrated to us why this needs to be codified. I mean, we've been a supporter for a long time, but it was just a striking experience. My husband went to the middle school where one of my kids go for a training in the evening, a parent training. And when he arrived, he noticed a mother and a child kind of looking around the lobby, looking around the outside of the school. The mother was crying. I mean, he could tell something was wrong. He couldn't really tell what they were doing, and he doesn't speak Spanish. He went over and started trying to talk to them, and the child was trying to communicate with my husband that they couldn't find the middle schooler. They had a middle schooler who went to the school, who never came home, and they were completely unsure what to do. So my husband was like, you know, he's thinking, did you call the cops, you know? Because if our kid didn't come home from school and we'd been looking for 6 hours, you know, at that point it's like time to get the cops involved, you know? And they said, no, like we can't tell anybody, you know, my mom is afraid to tell anybody, we don't know what to do. And we've talked to everybody, and so we're back at the school, and the school's locked now, and, you know, we're afraid to even tell the principal, you know? So fortunately, a teacher walked by, and this was just a blessing from God. It was a teacher who like knew the child, you know, who was missing, and also spoke some Spanish, and was able to coordinate with them. And they wound up discovering that there had been a miscommunication, and the boy had gone to another child's house and whatever. So it all worked out. But my husband and I had this long conversation that night about it, just that in 1,000 different ways, it impacts these people's lives every single day. And it's that perpetual fear that if something could go wrong, but for the grace of God, it could go wrong for any of us, you know. They do not feel the security in being able to go to the authorities for help, which they deserve. You know, they're here working hard, contributing to society. Their children are friends with our children. Like you say, a lot of them are professionals and teach our children. It's just absurd that they should be living their lives in fear.
Thank you for your comment. People are terrorized, and I believe that right here in Montgomery County, we have the opportunity to send a very extraordinary message and say, like, you can go to the police, don't worry about it. You can go to the police and you can receive that services. So that is a very clear example of how important it is that we codify this to send a very important message to the police and to everybody. If somebody comes to you, you cannot collaborate with immigration. So that is very important.
So in closing, I'd just like to thank everyone here for great questions and you for a wonderful presentation. And I think it's fair to say that everyone here would agree that in response to an extraordinary outpouring of hate, the best response and the only response is an extraordinary outpouring of love for our neighbor. And that's a fundamental value for us. And I hear you telling us that the best way to do this is not get caught up in the toxic rhetoric and the politicization, but try to focus like a laser on helping change the circumstances for people who are suffering in this climate, in terms of working on advocacy, in terms of helping people to integrate. I mean, there are concrete things and positive things that we can do to show love in the face of hate. And that's what I hope we'll do. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.